This coin could buy you a week's worth of wheat in the year 100 AD. By 250, this same coin, now barely containing any silver at all, couldn't buy you a single loaf of bread. Rome didn't fall because of the barbarians at the gates. Rome fell because of what happened to coins like these, 200 years before the empire collapsed. Today we're diving into the economic catastrophe that nobody talks about. How Rome's currency crisis destroyed the greatest empire the world has ever seen. And why understanding this matters more than ever. I am Jeremy Ryan Slate, and this is the Roman Pattern. So let's start at the beginning, when Roman money actually meant something. In 211 BC, Rome introduced the denarius. This wasn't just a coin, it was a promise, a silver promise, weighing about 4.5 grams with 95 to 98% purity. For centuries, this system worked beautifully. A Roman soldier earned about 225 denarii per year, and a loaf of bread cost half a denarius. A modest house? Well, maybe 50,000 denarii. These numbers were stable and predictable, trustworthy. But here's what most people don't understand about ancient economics. The value of money was literally in the metal itself. There was no Federal Reserve, no central banking system. The coin's value came from the silver it contained, which means the emperor started messing with that silver content. Everything fell apart. And it started with one of Rome's most famous and most reckless emperors. The year is 64 AD. Emperor Nero has a problem. Rome is expensive to run, the military needs paying, and the people demand bread and circuses. And Nero himself, well, he's building a massive golden palace called the Domus Aurea, the Golden House, covering 300 acres of prime Roman real estate. So Nero does something that seems brilliant in the moment, but catastrophic in hindsight. He reduces the silver content of denarius from 95% to 88%. Think about what that means. Nero takes 100 pounds of silver that makes 100 coins and instead makes 108 coins. He's just created 8% more money out of thin air. In the short term, it works. Nero pays the bills. The palace gets built. Everyone's happy. But here's the insidious part. Once you start, you can't stop. Because now every emperor after Nero faces the same temptation. Military crisis? Well, debase the currency. Economic downturn? Debase the currency. Want to fund a building project? Debase the currency. By the time of Marcus Aurelius, in 160 AD, that philosopher emperor everyone loves, the denarius is down to 75% silver. Under Septimius Severus in 193 AD, 50% silver. That coin that was once a silver promise is now half base metal, and the Roman economy is about to pay the price. By 222 AD, under Severus Alexander, the denarius contains just 40% silver. But the real catastrophe hits during what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century. 235 to 284 AD, just 50 years, Rome has 26 different emperors. Most are murdered and some reign for mere months. And every single one of them needs money fast. So they debase the currency even further. By 250 AD, the denarius contains approximately 5% silver. 5%. It's essentially a bronze coin with a silver coating that rubs off in your hands. Now here's where the economic dominoes start falling. So domino number 1 is hyperinflation. Remember that wheat that costs half a denarius in the 2nd century? Well, by 301 AD, it costs 2 denarii. That's a 400% increase. But it's actually worse than that, because the denarius itself is worth 95% less than it used to be. The real purchasing power has collapsed by 98%. Domino number 2 is military breakdown. Roman soldiers are paid in worthless coins. A legionnaire's salary used to be respectable, enough to retire comfortably after 25 years of service. Well, now it's barely enough to eat. So what happens? Soldiers stop being loyal to Rome and start being loyal to whoever pays them more. This is why you see the constant military coup during the crisis of the 3rd century. Generals promising their troops better pay in better coins, and marching on Rome. The professional Roman legions that conquered the Mediterranean, well, they're being replaced by mercenaries who fight for the highest bidder. Domino number 3 is trade collapse. International merchants aren't stupid. They know Roman coins are worthless, so they stop accepting them. Trade routes that connected Rome to India, China, and Africa start breaking down. The Roman economy, which was built on Mediterranean-wide trade, begins to fragment into local economies using barter or foreign currencies. Rome is eating itself from the inside out. 284 AD, a general named Diocletian seizes power and decides he's going to fix this mess. His diagnosis? Well, the problem isn't the currency. It's the greedy merchants raising prices. So in 301 AD, Diocletian issues one of history's most infamous economic decrees, the Edict of Maximum Prices. This document fixes prices on over 1,200 goods and services. A pound of pork, a maximum of 12 denarii. A day's wage for a farm laborer, a maximum of 25 denarii. A lawyer's fee is a maximum of 1,000 denarii per case. And if you charge more than the maximum, the death penalty. Now you might think, okay, well that's harsh and maybe it'll work. Well, it doesn't work. It catastrophically doesn't work. Here's what happens when you impose price controls in an inflationary economy. Well, problem number 1 is shortages if the government says you can only charge 12 denarii for a pound of pork, but it costs you 15 denarii to raise the pig. So you stop raising pigs. Farmers abandon their land, merchants close their shops, and goods disappear from the market. Problem number 2 is the black market. People still need food, so illegal markets spring up everywhere, selling goods at real market prices. The law-abiding citizens starve while criminals prosper. Problem number 3 is economic exodus. Skilled workers flee to rural areas outside the empire entirely. Why stay in a city where you're forced to work at a loss? Within a few years, Diocletian's edict is essentially abandoned. It's unenforceable. The damage, however, is permanent. The Roman economy has been shattered not just by inflation, but by the government's catastrophic attempt to deny an economic reality. By the 4th century, Rome is economically hollowed out. Constantine tries to fix things by introducing a new gold coin, the Solidus, with real value. But here's the problem. There's not enough gold to run the entire economy. The Solidus becomes the currency of the elite, while everyone else still uses worthless bronze coins. You have a 2-tier economy, the rich operating in gold and the poor drowning in inflation. Meanwhile, the Plague of Cyprian from 251 to 270 AD has decimated the population. Some estimates suggest 25% of the empire died. That's not tragic, it's economically catastrophic. Fewer workers means less production. Less production means less tax revenue. And less tax revenue means the government debases the currency even more. It's a death spiral. The military situation becomes impossible. Rome can't afford to pay professional legions, so they increasingly rely on barbarian mercenaries, the Federoti, who have no loyalty to Rome itself. When the Visigoths sack Rome in 410, it's not really an invasion. It's more like a collection agency showing up when you can't pay your bills. The Western Roman Empire officially falls in 476 AD. But economically, it died 200 years earlier when the denarius lost its silver. So what's the lesson here? Rome's collapse wasn't about moral decay or barbarian invasions, or lead pipes for that matter. Those didn't help. Rome collapsed because it destroyed its own currency to pay for things it couldn't afford. Every empire faces this temptation. Create money out of thin air to solve short-term problems. And every time, the long-term consequences are catastrophic. The Roman denarius went from 95% silver to 5% silver in 250 years. Each emperor thought just a little debasement won't hurt, but it compounds, it accelerates, and eventually the entire system collapses. Here's what makes this terrifying. We're watching the same pattern play out today. The US dollar lost over 95% of its purchasing power since 1913, and we're not on a silver standard or a gold standard anymore. We're not on any standard. Money is created with keystrokes. Now, I'm not saying we're Rome. Modern economies are far more complex. We have tools Rome didn't. But the fundamental principle remains. You cannot indefinitely create money without destroying its value. Rome thought it could. For 200 years, it seemed to work until suddenly it didn't. And when the currency collapsed, everything else collapsed with it. The military, the trade networks, the cities, the empire itself. The question isn't whether this can happen to modern empires. Rome proves it can. The question is, are we paying attention to the warning signs? The fall of Rome wasn't a single event. It was a process, a slow economic strangulation that took centuries. But it started with a simple decision: reduce the silver in coins. Just a little. Just this once. And that's how empires fall. Not with a bang, but debasement. If you found this deep dive valuable, let me know in the comments and what other economic factors contributed to Rome's fall. I'm thinking about covering taxation, trade disruption, or a labor crisis next. And if you want to understand how history rhymes with today, well, subscribe to this channel, because Rome's lessons aren't just history. They're a warning. Thanks for watching. I am Jeremy Ryan Slate, and remember, history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme.